Welcome back to the Crypto Power Hour, powered by Solum Global, with your host, the founder of Solum Global, Kirk St. John's, crypto's most interesting man. And of course, Antonio Moss from overseas, the crypto queen, and myself, Lance Miliaccio. This is your ultimate deep dive into everything crypto, blockchain, and decentralized finance. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just stepping into the world of digital assets, we bring you expert insights, top interviews, exciting new projects, breaking news, and game-changing innovations shaping the future of digital assets. No hype, no fluff, just real talk, real strategies, and real opportunities in the world of crypto, because on this show, in crypto, we trust. Man, I'm happy to be back in the saddle. We've been rocking and rolling behind the scenes. Of course, the Crypto Power Hour is the top growing crypto show on Rumble right now. So we're excited for you guys to be here. Hopefully you've tuned in maybe for an additional time. If it's your first time, welcome to the group. I'm excited about today's interview, but let me just go around the table. Tony Moss, you're still over in the UK. How's that weather and how are you doing?
You know what? It was actually brightening up a little bit for us, but I do miss my US friends, so I need to get back ASAP.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't blame you there, but are you sure you're in the right location? You just mentioned sun in the UK.
Yeah, something's going wrong. I was so excited. I actually smiled for once in
Oh, no, don't do that.
It was a shocker.
You don't want to do that. All right, Kirk St. John's, how are you, brother? What's going on, man?
Good. No, great day. We got a lot of neat stuff happening for you guys that remember us talking about putting the studio together. So we have a little mini bar that's coming in. So the cabinet guys came today. That's all in. The granite and the booze will be in hopefully in the next week or so. So we'll be able to do our crypto and cocktails hour.
Who's going to be in charge of the key to lock up the liquor cabinet? I don't want you guys coming on air all stressed out.
Well, that's particular show. You've got to be prepared for whatever happens, right? That's
exactly.
That's
good news, bad news. Have a cocktail. That always solves it. Johnny Tabacco, I'm so excited for you to be here. You were just on the Big Mig show over Rumble recently. Lots of great feedback. You know, it's always great to dialogue with a guy from back east. Man, how are you, brother? You came in. You got your gear on. I like it.
On the list, going into the season here, I got to represent my Mets. We got big hopes and dreams this year. The highest paid player ever in MLB history, so they better.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I understand. It's a long history, but you know, it's at least things have changed a little bit. I remember when they used to have Bat Day as kids at the Mets and the New York Yankees. I could never figure out why you would get a bunch of New Yorkers sloshed up on beer and then hand them mini bats and send them into the street. That never seemed like a good idea to me. I don't know.
You know, I've been 17-year-old Staten Island guys with those little wooden bats from the Mets.
And I still have mine from the Yankees.
Exactly.
Exactly. It was like a mini catfish bat, and I always thought it was a really bad idea, man. All right.
Go Yankees. That's all I'm going to say tonight.
That's George on the screen. You know, he had to chime in.
Funniest thing. And I went to Bedminster over the summer for an event, and you know I had my call, my camera, equipment, a couple tripods.
Yeah,
they were going through the back of my car. The Secret Service guys are all suited. I got my credentials on. And the Secret Service station comes out with aluminum Louisville Slugger bats. Yeah. He's like, idiot. This, you know, I'm like, my son has been 5 years. And it's, no, my son doesn't.
Yeah, you might not, I don't know if you're supposed to roll into the White House with a bat in your trunk. I'm not sure. Doesn't surprise me. You know, they will go through everything, that's for sure. I just dealt with that at Mar-a-Lago, but I got to give them credit. They do a good job, especially a lot better than under the previous administration. It seems like they're doing a decent job of protecting 47. But for the audience, I just want to go through. If you guys don't know Johnny Tabacco, he's a bold voice in American media. He's known for his no-nonsense commentary, sharp wit, unapologetic patriotism. He's got a background in business and broadcasting, been in the game for a very long time. Johnny built his reputation as a fearless host with champions free speech, exposes corruption, fights for American values. And I don't care whether he's behind the mic or in front of the camera, he delivers hard-hitting truth with passionate style. Of course, he's another back east guy, so we love our banter. It is what it is. But Johnny, a lot of people, I didn't realize this. You have been in the crypto game for a very long time, really since its inception, and really know probably more about ETFs than almost anybody I know because you hold some patents on them. I just wanted to go in with the team here today and talk about ETFs, which are exchange traded funds. They've been around a long time in the stock market, but cryptocurrency, we're seeing a lot of brand new filings. We're seeing a lot of information emerging. Maybe take us through, Johnny, how you were smart enough to get right on top of the potential for ETFs, especially in the Bitcoin vertical.
Well, look, hey, thanks for that wonderful intro for your team collaborating on finding all the good things that I've done in life. Thank you for that. I wouldn't say I was so smart. I would say it was born out of practicality. You nicely said, other on the other day and stuff, said that, you didn't realize I was involved with crypto and Bitcoin and blockchain for so long. But I was, I heard you, the king, the queen, the number one. I got to get a nickname. I got to get a crypto nickname.
Got to get you a street.
This is a good one.
Yeah, well, don't worry. I'll work on that.
Maybe an OG or something like that.
Crypto kid.
Maybe the crypto father of crypto. What do you think about that one? The godfather?
I don't like
Crypto kid. We're going with crypto kid.
Okay. I'm the godfather to my niece Elda. That's it. I'm not the godfather of any. I think advantage of that stereotype enough on lifestyle. I don't need to.
No, I understand. Gotta be careful. We don't want to go down the wrong vertical. Next thing you know, you get another door and half a dozen flashbangs running around.
I'm in good standing on all sides of the street right now. I don't need to be profaning myself to God, Father, PP.
I got you. I understood. I can appreciate your perspective. But, it's still, no matter what, I do think to have that kind of insight, it comes from experience.
Yeah.
Not only experience in the financial markets, but tell us kind of how you came up to the conclusion that this was it was going to be, of course, you're spot on, because ETFs right now, it's the talk of the town in the blockchain world.
Indeed. So, it's funny because I could have a bunch of different conversations with you. But, I've been in the short selling and securities lending business for most of my life. I built some fintech platforms that were the first of their kind, market data, transparency. And I really became kind of like a wonk on, free markets, elimination of, rent seekers, middlemen, just clean, clear markets. And, short selling is Berman, that's been on the business. And, Patrick Byrne became, I became friends with Patrick Byrne because his company was experiencing a battle with short sellers. We became friends. I worked for 15 or so years, capital markets advisor. Then Patrick said, hey, this blockchain, I owe it all to Patrick because he said, hey, this blockchain thing is a way to clean up the settlement world. They sell everything one for one, same day on the blockchain. There could be no room for flux and fails and systemic risk. And he said, Johnny, I got all these, called this technicians, technologists, propeller heads. So I got all these propeller heads here. They're speaking dolphin speak. I need somebody who understands how the plumbing works and can translate that into the dolphins. I'll put people in between you, but I want you know how to create the wormhole between the potential of blockchain and the legacy capital markets equity systems. And then, I advised the company, consulted with Patrick on how to be the first e-commerce company ever to accept Bitcoin as a payment form. We did that. I did risk analysis on that. Ultimately in the beginning, we did it as pass-through. I lost money on the transactions, but we wanted to understand the workflow and the order flow of accepting it as a payment form and what all the price friction is to getting out of it, what time ratio. So we were actually losing money on Bitcoin transactions just to do them and then machine learn off of the workflow of that. And then, we founded T0. I was one of the co-founders with Patrick, a couple of other folks, and Overstock owned 80% of that, and we, the minority folks, 20%. And then we did the first legal funds on the blockchain that was between Overstock and First New York Securities. We did the first digital offering on the blockchain, first public equity issuance. So all through that, I led the team. I was co-founder of T0, was vice president of technology, and as we were going through, we were talking about how T0 settlement ultimately eliminates the need for a transfer agent, and blockchain kind of brings it to T0. That's how we came up with the name.
Johnny, what year was that for the audience, just so everybody gets a timeline?
Let's see. Well, I worked for Overstock since 2005, up until 2019. I sold my company, Overstock, my partner in 2016-ish, 17. And, we're certainly working on the Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain. Patrick had a land titling platform that he was working on the blockchain. So he really was convinced that the blockchain would be the master ledger and eliminate, which he taught me that term, rent-seeking behaviors, that in every industry with legacy systems, there are rent seekers and that don't really provide a business, that are leftover referral agreements, that people that provided no service, but somewhere or another they grease the wheels. And at the end of the day, they're rent seekers and they provide no service. So he taught me philosophically, be happy to pay middlemen who provide a service and either provide you with better rates or better speed. Be happy for those. They're middlemen who will provide you a service, but there's rent seekers and everything. And we started really looking at eliminating transfer agents, and the company, the issuer, keep the cap table themselves on the blockchain, and it's empirical. It's no question about it, unless somebody wants to come some, OTC or NASDAQ share, or, whatever. But, there's bigger fish for hackers to fry. But, and then, years ago, my own business, when ETFs first came out, a lot of my clients would either short the individual components and be long the ETF, where they would find some arbitrage between the shorting of the individual components and they would change the weights, or they would go long the components and then they would turn them in to the agent and then create ETFs. So they would buy or borrow all the card, put them into the transfer agent, and not just transfer agent, the ETF agent, custodian, and then they would basically create them an ETF by, throwing that to the shares they have bought. So a lot of my customers used to, if stocks are like really volatile and screws up the beta for them, then instead of buying or shorting it, what they would do is borrow it. So they would come to me and say, hey, I need 800,000 of this, I need 200,000 of that. And then when the delivery of securities came in from DTC, there's no code on it. We own this, we borrowed this, it just comes in fungible, we got them. Mm-hmm. So I used to create, and then when the fee was, you paid like $5,000 for one create. And then everything after that would be like 500 a day or something, 500 for that. So I would get a few clients that would do it and pass on the $5,000. And they would sell it, they would get what they wanted, it was happy. I would clean up their blocks with borrowed shares. And then I would go to some smaller guys and say, hey, do you want to create? It's only $2,500. And I would get some smaller guys to do smaller ETF creates for their arbitrage business. I made $2,000. So I got 2 or 3 other guys that day. It was like almost all gravy. So it really understood the issues, the nuance of creating ETFs and deconstructing ETFs, arbitraging ETFs. And we'll look at cap table management and transfer shares and all stuff. A blockchain toolbox transfer agent, AI, almost auto learning. I started thinking, well, at some point there's going to be an ETF, and it has to be a way to custody and kind of segregate. So you all can't net settle. So you gotta have a master wallet. I just started thinking like, hey, if this thing ever gets big, at that time, Warren Buffett and JP Morgan and everyone will come out and say, Patrick Byrne is an absolute fraudster and a loon. This is a tulip scheme. He's wearing it with pictures of him in the Financial Times, like don't to it, right?
Yeah, I remember that actually.
I was thinking then that, hey, if this thing ever gets to where we think it can, there'll be ETFs. We should put a stake in the ground and say, let's do a real filing about, the genesis capabilities of this happening. And more than likely, if we're on something, then, whatever people come after that, they'll already have copied some of our efforts in the public bonds, the public, how we did that and kept cap table. So we would have kind of in practice some parts of what we were proposing to use in the ETF. And yeah, I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but, I can. Everyone can go look it up. I'm one of the inventors, one of four inventors, that was granted to overstock.com and myself. So I'm one of the named inventors on that patent. And, in my view, if you look at it, the main one that we wrote was for all the asset. The ones that have kind of got, all the headline interest, the single stocks that kind of go around, some of the nuanced needs, for segregation in a multi-asset. But as it turns out, people do multi-asset also. I think, they're infringing. T0 has a right to go out and, question people that I think are infringing, but I also think, they're putting it to use too. Some of these patents, they have a utilization need. We got to demonstrate. Okay,
John, are you saying that, like, if I look at 21 Shares or BlackRock, their ETF stuff, did they go out and invent something new, or they're basically using what you guys came up with? I'm not sure what you're saying there.
No, I would say on the thing, they're doing basically, they're basically doing spot Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, right? They don't have a blend of five. They have
Like a basket.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, like a basket of digital assets.
Yeah. So they're basically saying, we're buying this, and we're charging you this fee, and the rest of the performance of this is yours.
Right.
You follow me? So,
I think CTF, I think Crypto Trading Fund is doing the diversified basket.
yeah, there are a few of them. I'm saying, like, I'm not like a litigious guy. I'm an innovator. I'm an event. That's why not many people have their name on a real fashion as the event. No, not internationally and stuff. So, I'd rather see other people run with it, and hopefully, T0, which I'm still a big shareholder in, hopefully they'll start to put it to use. And then, if they feel like it goes challenge their patent or, infringement involved, but I'm not rooting for that. I'm rooting for, mass adoption of, simple blockchain, digital security awareness. People just need to learn a little more. They'll want to own some.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to hold you just there for a minute, just for the audience, because some of the people in the audience are newbies. This show's all about educating in crypto. For you guys out there, ETFs, these are investment funds traded, on traditional stock exchanges aimed to mirror the price movements of specific cryptocurrencies, or a basket, as Johnny just said. So basically, we're talking about the opportunity to use a system that for the longest time has already been used in stocks, but they want to apply it in the cryptocurrency markets. So options, puts, futures, that sort of thing. You're going to see a lot of this, and you see so many different companies. Kirk, I don't know how many you're familiar with, but I know you're kind of on top of this because you and I have had many discussions.
Yeah.
We're seeing the early stage of this. And to me, this is why I think that the cryptocurrency market and so many of the digital assets are undervalued right now. And tell me if I'm wrong. Once this really gets integrated and the institutional money really starts to swing into this, don't you think we're going to see some massive growth over the next, 24, 36 months?
Yeah, 100%. So it's interesting because I did a little list here of, we're talking about primarily Bitcoin, but this is an XRP list real quick, or people that either have or filing. names people will notice: Fidelity, Robinhood, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Interactive Brokers, eToro, and the list just goes on and on. And I think it's not only going to open the door for institution, but a lot of people, that we mentioned, like on the last show, that normally, they wouldn't go out and hunt down a crypto exchange and try to find a way to sign up and buy crypto. But, if they can go to the local Charles Schwab office on the corner or log into their Fidelity app, they can get it done. And then just one other tidbit before I hand it back that I thought that was really interesting. The number like 6 or 7 most valuable crypto in the world, I'd have to look it up for today, but it's a stable coin. It's called USDC. And right behind Tether, it's the next behemoth, like 55, maybe $58 billion market cap. And it's a company called Circle Limited. So the ETFs are like opening doors. So the day after the Bitcoin ETF was approved, Circle Limited, a US-based corporation, filed to go public. So they haven't made it all the way through yet, and they're navigating. But these are like what I would call benchmarks of TradFi trying to figure out how to get their feet wet here in our backyard.
And I think that's so important. I think one of the big issues, of course, we talked about it, the difficulty of people to get a level of, expertise where they feel like their money's safe. With this, investors are going to gain exposure to the crypto markets without the complexities of directly purchasing, storing, or managing. And as we've spoken about so many times on the show, there isn't an all-in-one wallet or an exchange. You're going to find out that there's so many, of the cryptocurrencies that live on different exchanges, whether it's a Solana coin, an Ethereum coin. It gets really difficult. You have to own half a dozen wallets to trade in new coins. Sometimes if you have interest in an AI meme coin, you're going to find yourself having to use Kraken or some other wallet that gives you access to some of what I would consider the non-blue chip coins at this point. To me, this makes things more accessible. And I got to ask you, Antonia, we always talk about accessibility for the average person. You come from the financial markets also, much like Johnny. Don't you think that this access is going to add an increase that we're even going to see before the end of the year? Because now we know the SEC has stepped out of the way finally. We heard the good news about XRP. It's good news for everybody. Sure, there's more fixes that need to happen. But does an accessibility in this case equal a massive increase in the market even through the end of the year?
100%. I think I very much agree with you in terms of the speed of this. Like, we're seeing the crypto market develop at a crazy, crazy pace, but with regulation and institutions and this kind of grown-up version of crypto, which the push forward in ETFs just reinforces, I think that then will have a very strong effect, right? And it is almost like gateway drug-esque for people who don't necessarily want to research one coin themselves and invest, but it's a way for people to get involved. So yeah, in answer to your question, I think we will see, just this market getting bigger and bigger through things like this. It's making it open and available to more people who might not think they're an expert.
Yeah, and I think that when you add a second layer to this, Johnny, what do you think? We talked about it on the last show because we were talking about a company that had a max downside of 5%, but they were also offering a max upside of 40% in an AI kind of a trading ETF that they were coming out with. To me, when you add AI to this, the potential for upside or generation, what's your thought? I see you smiling, so you're probably familiar maybe with that. What are your thoughts on what AI, the impact that's going to be on these ETFs? No, it's all good. I mute sometimes too, and sometimes I
have my I don't know if she's my clean lady walking around behind me, but she just, although she knows I'm on air right now, she's whipped on the drive behind me from the office here. Stop out.
Nice.
Trying to spare you guys that.
Usually it's my dogs notifying me that the ultra dangerous Amazon person is in close proximity to the house. So I have to deal with that occasionally with the old mute button.
No, listen, I think your earlier point was fantastic. And I always thought, like, even going back to my early days, as we learned more and more, we ultimately had to use a traditional transfer agent on our first couple of projects because the regulators couldn't even see if they're not being a transfer agent. So we had to kind of get along a little bit. But at the end of all days, what I always thought that the biggest problem is, and it exists till this day, what you said, these wallets, some of them are interoperable, some of them aren't interoperable. You need an account here or a passport there, this document there. And I still think even with Coinbase probably leads the field, and Kraken's good and others. Just easily get money in, money out, trade. Tell me what the friggin' cost is, and either I'll pay those middlemen to make it seamless for me, like we talked about before, or I'll go open the other account and do it. But just somebody make it easy. And Kirk said it right. Stable coins. That's probably the next step for people who are hesitant about crypto. I don't know if they can go all the way to Bitcoin or ETH just yet, but a stable coin can give them, kind of an intermediary step. And I, think we're seeing more and more, even in some of the president's statements, interviewed the crypto czars, Sachs last week. I was at the lucky enough to be invited to the crypto task force meeting at the SEC on Friday. And it seems like everything's coming up roses for stable coins right now. So people who I think can innovate around that, show some certainty that you're not going to get robbed with some clear disclosures. And I think, the advent of stable coins is upon us for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Excuse me. The regulation in January, we know that they approved the SEC finally approved those first spot Bitcoin ETFs. And I think that opened the gateway. And now with some of the deregulation, it seems like that we've determined that coins like XRP are not a security. I think we're going to see more and more of these ETF filings. And I think the benefit for the audience, just so the issue with crypto for some people is that it's a 24/7, 365 market. It never closes.
Yeah.
It might seem like the traffic's going down here in the U.S., but here you are overseas, and people right away are waking up, and that's how you see these surges through different times of the day, especially when the Asian markets open up. You'll see Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and others surge at certain time periods. It's hard to track all that. So having somebody to manage it and increase institutional participation from the names we already know, from the big players in the industry, it makes it a lot easier. And of course, as of March, the Bitcoin ETFs experienced a big rebound. They recorded 744 million in inflows, and that was after a streak of outflows. And I think we're going to see more inflows. Same thing with Ethereum. And I know about some companies we talked about on the show before that are trading using AI to trade these coins, and they're managed groups. Animus Technologies is one of them, and they've got for a 4-year period over a 600% return. And they can do it in IRAs and others. So pretty interesting product. All right, listen, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be here with Johnny Tabacco, Antonio Moss, Kirk St. John's, and of course myself, Lance Migliaccio. We're going to be digging in. Not going to stop. It's all about crypto, because in crypto we trust. We'll be right back. Stay tuned to the Crypto Power.
As an American who keeps up with the real news, you know by now the severity of the economic issues that are plaguing our great nation. My name is Jonathan Rose, and I'm the CEO of Genesis Gold Group, the only major faith-driven company in the industry. 2024 is a year full of uncertainties, with trillions of dollars in national debt, inflation impacting your savings, and a pivotal election year. Your peace of mind is more valuable than ever. Now is the time to use physical gold and silver to preserve your hard-earned retirement savings with a gold IRA. Call Genesis Gold Group today. Our team has decades of experience helping folks just like you take their first step on the path to true financial freedom with a gold and silver IRA.
Call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD for a no-commitment, informative consultation with one of our experts to find out if we can be a fit for you. Call now at 1-800-200-4653 or visit genesisgoldgroup.com.
In a world of uncertainty, be prepared with Silver Prepper Bars, your ultimate hedge against political instability and economic turmoil. Introducing the Silver Prepper Bar, crafted from 0.999 pure silver and proudly made in the USA. This tangible, divisible asset can come in handy even in the toughest of times. Portable, perforated, and easily tradable, the Silver Prepper Bar is your lifeline in times of crisis. When facing inflation, currency devaluation, and financial meltdown, Silver Prepper Bars provide peace of mind. Don't wait for disaster to strike. Secure your future today with the exclusive Silver Prepper Bar, the only silver bar on the market divisible into 3 different size pieces for maximum utility, all while fitting in your wallet. The smart choice for savvy investors and preppers alike. With Silver Prepper Bars, you're ready for whatever tomorrow brings. Hi folks, I'm here today to introduce you to the Prepper Bar from PrepperBar.com, the most unique precious metals product we have seen in a long time. These 62-gram bars are perforated and easily broken down into your choice of 3 different sizes to fit a multitude of needs. Whether it be from asset protection from inflation, economic turmoil, or its unique utility for barter and trade, the Prepper Bar makes a perfect gift for all the precious metal lovers out there. Exclusively made here in the USA and selling out fast. Available in both gold and silver, these slim Prepper Bars fit neatly in your wallet, and their utility enables use in any situation. As gold and silver prices continue to surge and top economists predict upcoming shortages, now is the time to secure your precious metals in the form of Prepper Bars. Go to PrepperBar.com now and place your order before supply runs out and prices go up. All payment methods accepted. Order your Silver Prepper Bars now at PrepperBar.com. Silver Prepper Bars, ready for whatever tomorrow brings. Order now.
Very good. All right, welcome back. Yeah, it's the Crypto Power Hour, but no, I'm not Lance. The exciting verifies out from Wise Guys, and although I may act like a dopey Guido on TV and fool around a little bit, I've been innovative for quite some time in blockchain and Bitcoin. And Lance, the great host of this show, recognized that talent. And today, be part of the Crypto Power Hour. Kurt St. John's on my show, on with Antonio last week. So we're back with the crew, not the Wise Guys crew, the Crypto Power Hour crew. And I'm still waiting for my nickname. Now is the name.
Yeah, of course. Listen, of course, we're not listening. Now that was amazing. Of course, the ultimate professional. Johnny's got much more experience than all of us. He's been in the game for a long time. And that's why we love him, because he just brings it proper every single time. You're back with the Crypto Power Hour. Of course, in Crypto We Trust. If you didn't catch the first half of the show and you want to know about ETFs, I'd recommend looking at it. It's a great opportunity. You're going to want to be thinking about this. If you're not somebody that's glued to a computer every single moment of the day like this particular team is, we're always on social media, we're always focused, cranking away. You want to make sure that you've taken the time to educate yourself, and that's what the Crypto Power Hour is all about. It's about educating you so you can make competent decisions. I think it's an opportunity for generational wealth. Nothing on this show is financial advice. It's just a bunch of people that spend their time educating themselves about crypto so that you don't have to be on your computer 24/7, 365 like we are. Of course, I want to talk about, and Kirk, this is a big area for you, man. You have really jumped on board with this. You've talked about the importance of this. We've talked about the strength of decentralization and what it means for people. It reduces control. And of course, there are many people that are in legal processes. I don't care whether we're talking about title insurance or anything else. There's concerns, right? We've even seen a bunch of title fraud. Not even recently, it's become a kind of a recurring pattern. Somebody's got a home that's paid off. All of a sudden, they find out their title wasn't protected. And the next thing they know, they get a knock on the door and says, oh, well, you don't own the house anymore. The title's been transferred. Right. So what do you think about, what's the impact going to be with smart contracts?
Well, I mean, just to step back for a second, a smart contract, basically, it's a set of business rules. It can be super simple, like you've got a wallet, I've got a wallet, I'm sending you coin. But it can also be something that reflects an existing set of business rules out in the universe, right? So A guy, what was his name? Ian Krigg invented something called the Ricardian contract, which is a business process flow. You can replicate that through smart contract coding. And then when you take both sides of a deal, so Johnny's got, an apple and Jennifer has a milk, and they're going to switch it at lunch, and they're going to consummate that transaction. How do you take that and put it in a position where you can read it and see it and have it stored on chain? And so I was, it came out of a couple of applications we did back in the early days before what is today the multiple listing service. So got a little bit of experience in Web 2 and real estate. But when I started thinking about, a chain in real estate, they actually call it a chain of title. So here in West Palm, I think my house was built, I want to say like 1972. So from the time the construction company that bought this land, this whole neighborhood, I live in a place called South of Southern. He bought all the parcel, like a big parcel, and then he chopped it up into little pieces, and then he built homes on those little pieces, and then eventually sold that to one person who sold it to another person who sold it to the guy that I bought it from. So when I go to sell my house, the insurance, the mortgage lender who gives the money to the person that's going to buy my house wants to be absolutely sure I have title. So that concept in real estate, probably most people have been involved with it. It's called a title search. And what that really is just a person going down to the courthouse to make sure that you own the property, there's no liens on it, and things of that nature. And then they can trace back the chain of title. So very simple, and I think it's going to be extremely disruptive to the real estate industry once more like, real world companies and real world processes start to utilize the feature sets of the immutable ledgers, whether it's XRP or Bitcoin, or maybe someone will make up a whole new chain for title. It allows you to take the record of who owns the house, put that on chain all the way back through time. And every time it changes after that, you update it. And each one of those transactions on chain keep this perfect record of who owns it, how long they owned it, and when they sold it. So this is just like one little foot in the door for legal. There's all kinds of other stuff. We saw some producers that said, hey, if you can take the song and the song rights and you get them on chain, well, then you can prove by the timestamp of when it was created. So if someone else picks this tune up later and makes a big hit out of it, you could always go back and say, hey, we're the ones that recorded that song and here's our proof. So I think, the legal industry is just starting to get open. Johnny and I were out at Mar-a-Lago a month or so ago smoking stogies outside, and he had some pretty cool insight on that. So John, I think I'll throw it to you and see what you got to say.
Hi, Rosa. Sorry about that.
I saw a bit
on you, but she is on.
That's good.
Yeah, look, I think going back to what I was talking about before, how, the ETF allocations, and net settling that, and how, that got me out of the ETF patents, and then removing the cap table saturation. This is kind of right on the money. This is where we look to show, like, all right, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe I know what I'm, you know what I mean? We better, okay. But yeah, title companies are dead. I think, it's only a matter of time. The Walking Dead. And I have, advised and consulted me and my brother on a couple of commercial projects where they're just creating a title token for the entire building with the entire mechanicals, upgrades, warranties, codes, serial numbers, this, that, the other thing. And then it's a permission token. So if somebody comes along and wants to be a bona fide buyer, you can either charge them to give them the all the information about the deal on the building, the repairs, the tenants, the occupancy, the payments, this, that, or you can charge them, or you can give it to them for free to get them modified. So, and that led me to thinking, right, where you are, title companies today. And I really think, in the overall of our, justice system, overall, the judicial branch, I think most municipal surrogate courts back up like 2 and 3 years of wills, all this other stuff. You got somebody out of paper and somebody else talk Uncle Johnny into signing something, and now there's a new paper over there, and then some other lawyer from 20 years ago and then there's all these lawyers making fees while everyone's fighting over the pot, and trustees getting paid. People wind up whacking up nothing. I been thinking and working on, it with some law firms that I'm friendly with, that wills should be on the blockchain. You could put it with your medical records and your title, and that's basically, you have a key. Maybe you give an attorney a cold wallet with the key, and you can have 1 or 2 people in your family that you provided with credentials in a disaster recovery situation, or and life situation. And to me, it can debate. It makes it very simple. Kind of cleans out the backlog in all the surrogate courts across America 5 years from now. So maybe the surrogate court can kind of fight about real stuff that they're supposed to, instead of fighting over multiple copies of their will. You can just update it anytime you want with a simple widget. Hey, it's me. It's my code. I have updated this edit. Genesis Providence there. Unless someone would come down to fraud. Someone would steal your credentials. Your will and testament is the last time you logged in and made an alteration into your will wallet.
It's a win-win when you start talking about blockchain and legal processes. I think that many people have dealt with probate. As you get older, of course, you deal with it more often because you have relatives that pass away. And I think that enhanced document security, the immutable nature of that blockchain ensures that once that information is recorded, it cannot be altered. There isn't any last-minute thing where somebody says, "Oh, I just produced a new copy of the will." Right. It's totally different than the previous copy. It sounds ridiculous, but it's happened. Of course, also, the inefficiency, I think, of contract execution, right? Smart contracts could automate all that. Everybody's walked into the close on a piece of real estate at one time or another. Here in Colorado, the documents are about that thick that you have to sign. Mm-hmm. And then you get in there and somebody forgot something, and then the closing has to be held off because somebody made a mistake. Seems like the efficiency of that blockchain could be easier. Of course, the transparency of the blockchain, being able to authenticate documents in licensing or, wills or titles, to be able to make sure that there isn't any hokey pokey going on, because we've heard lots of ugly stories of, old people getting taken advantage of in a miserable, rotten way. I don't care whether it's some shammer on the phone accessing their bank accounts. The security of all this really changes things. I mean, Antonio, you tell me, I think that this is exactly where it has to go. And for everybody that says, "Oh, I don't know, it's too confusing, the blockchain," this would simplify everything, if you ask me. This would take away the whole, it's overwhelming, because you'd have an efficient model that's easily, translated to the average person.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about this, right, is it's very much results-based. So some people who are might not know about Web3 or blockchain or anything really, I just explain what are the benefits of a smart contract solution, right? Even if you strip back, if people don't understand or they don't even need to know the different means of getting there, it's just the benefits in these instances are crazy. I also think applying it in the legal industry is an interesting one, right? Because the legal industry generally is just archaic, how it's all done. It's way too much human interference. There's way too much, human error. And it basically, you don't really know where you stand. It's so much like politics surrounding it. So I think having the legal industry on the blockchain in these instances will be interesting. I'm wondering how the adoption will go, because people in law have crude incentives, it's all billable hours, they kind of like and efficient, right? Yeah. So it's well, who are you going to pitch this to? How will it be onboarded? Because the whole legal industry just needs revolutionizing, to be honest. But ultimately, the results speak for themselves. And I just love seeing these technologies be applied to like real world massive industries like Solon's doing with healthcare, like the law industry, like real estate, because they are all due for just a better managed system. So this is another example of that for me. I don't know if I think the question there.
No, it's a great answer. And I think the important part is we're going to see pushback for sure. What real estate attorney or what title company isn't going to want to push back on this?
Well,
It's the direct attack on their fee structure. Kurt, you tell me. And I also want to hear from both you and Johnny what you think the impact of a normal set of title fees is thousands of dollars. Once we move that all to the blockchain, how much money is the consumer going to save? And I think that's will really accelerate adoption. But you guys go from there.
Well, what I was going to say first about legal, right? I think in the last several months as we've been tuning up Solum, I've used DocuSign to sign, I don't know, say 25, 30 different agreements. And, it's really not my signature. It's a different representation of my signature that I did on the screen of my phone, right? And then I actually have, most of you guys probably have it as well, but if someone sends me a PDF, I can just drag and drop my signature on the signature line if folks are familiar with that. So, I mean, if you know anything about Photoshop, right, you can take any contract and you could do that. So you can cut and paste someone's signature off of a contract they sent you, save it, and then use it. And that, I think, opens the door to all kinds of shenanigans, because if you're sitting there in a court of law and you have two different agreements, or the terms of the agreements are different, and they both have the same Photoshop version of your signature at the bottom, what's a judge to do? Right? I mean, how would he accurately discern that?
Auto pen gate, Joe Biden, prime example of that.
That's right. For all I know, some of those executive orders aren't even legit, but that's for another show, I'm sure. But you take that stuff, you move it to chain, and it just eliminates all that bullshit, right? That's all gone. But back to title, I mean, it's certainly going to make the process cheaper, whether Fidelity Title and Escrow or Chicago Title or, Land America, any of these big guys, we'll figure out a way to monetize it in the similar fashion than compared to what they do today. I don't know how much of that would get passed on to the consumer, but I do know that once Solum gets this medical thing under our belt, that's an industry we're going to take a serious look at.
Yeah, and I think anything that translates to ease of getting contracts completed, knowing what the truth is, and of course, lower fees for the consumer. I can't see how the adoption of this isn't getting accelerated. Johnny, what do you think? What do you think that if the normal set of fees on a land title deal are thousands, what do you think how the blockchain impacts that once this is fully integrated? What are we going to see in efficiencies and money and cost to the consumer?
Yeah, I would say in New York, maybe it's 5 to 10 G's for a title policy, something like that. Maybe there's a couple of little, fine fees, this, that, the other thing. You got to escrow that money. You know what I'm saying? So there is kind of, until the government agencies catch up with like real time reporting, there is still going to be some transitional need for traditional title companies, but they'll basically be doing kind of from your last update till now. You know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause people have like tax liens and shit that, like they're like small, but they're on there. But you know what I mean? They haven't updated themselves. So I think a good thing for adoption is I think there's some period where traditional transfer agents, traditional title companies could still be providing a service. I think in a lot of instances they're rent seekers because people own that house for how many years. Maybe they refinanced it once or twice, got an ECB violation, but they can run it 20 times in a row, can come up the same, and they charge 6 rent. But, the disruption theory, Meg, is, if you're going to go after price disruption, you're supposed to affect the kind of mean price by 80%. So, another thing is title policies are all whack in Jersey and Florida. Everybody has kind of different stuff and different fees. So I don't think there's a universal pricing, but I think, if in New York, if you really wanted people to adapt and open a wallet and all this other shit, it would have to be, to me, like 1,000. You know what I mean? Instead of 8. The 2 something like that could make people say, "Oh shit, I'll take a chance at that." And I think, certainly at the state level, because this is kind of very fragmented title companies, there's national title associations and stuff, but a lot of the states, even down to municipalities, relationships with the county clerks and stuff like that, right? So, BO, Department of Buildings Archives and stuff like that is, there's still some, witchcraft in that, if you ask me. But I think ultimately, like I said, Patrick convinced me of a philosophy where we were doing pilots. He was flying drones over parts of Africa, parts of Barbados, and other places where there's kind of no titles for people's property because they never really mapped the territory. So, like, the local clerk has, Kirk's property goes from the stone at 180 feet
to that piece of corn right over there,
to the head of the river, to the oak 300 feet back. Not kidding, right?
No, I've dealt with that down in Belize. I always surprised
villages like Belize and other places, certainly in the Caribbean. But Patrick said, when you map it, when you give them a title to it, it makes them bankable. And then you would see all these shitty, dilapidated houses with pipes sticking out, rivers running right in front of them. Yeah. And he would say, if you tell them it's theirs, and they can go down to the local bank and say, "Here's my deed. Can I borrow $5,000 and put in a new sidewalk?" Then they'll go do it, and they'll be proud that they did it. Now, other neighbors will follow. So, Patrick's belief was that clean title and, empirical beneficial ownership, proof of empirical beneficial ownership, is one of the ways to, attack, second and third world poverty and bankability. So, to me, Kirk, my father was a cop. When he retired, he became a spot builder. He built hundreds of houses in Staten Island. I used to go down to the building department and expedite, the title. Did they ever pay this? This mortgage wasn't recorded. This thing was, this ECB violation was dismissed 2 years ago. Here's the proof of it. And I used to do it right down to the paperwork. So I understand. As well, when I seen Kirk, I was like, holy cow, this guy thinks like I do. This is like an old thing, it's his thought more than mine on title. I've thought about it, but I kind of took it one step further down the road that when, you're dead and they need to switch the title to your kids, it should be sitting there right in your will. You know what I mean? Like, there it is. It's a wow, it's yours.
Success is when preparation and opportunity meet. So I think a lot of times you get guys that have an experience. That's Seneca 5 BC. I wish that was my quote, but it's not. At the end of the day, if you look at it from that perspective, the innovation of what of course, your ETFs, the block that involved, and of course, having the foresight to patent those, pretty amazing in the Bitcoin world. A lot of people first looked at Bitcoin, and I think 2008-9 is when you could just barely start to mine it and swap it. Yep. Some people bought pizzas with it, and they regret the fact that they bought pizzas with it now. Yeah. But of course, nobody had any idea it was going to be 84 or 5,000, I think, today in price. But it's the same thing I see here, the opportunity. When I tell people this is an opportunity for generational wealth, it's hard for them to wrap their head around it, because when you start talking about smart contracts or ETFs or decentralized finance, these are terms they're not used to. But just so you know, everybody on this show started somewhere. Of course, Johnny started much earlier than the majority of us. And I think, Kirk, your first innovation into crypto was what, 2013?
13, yeah.
13. And I think mine was probably 3 years ago. I'd heard about Bitcoin in 2009, and a friend of mine had set up some miners and had some limited success with them, but I didn't really recognize where this market was going to go. This innovation is an opportunity for everybody. So,
can I throw out a thought, because it's knowing you and Johnny and your love for America? How can we use this? And maybe even Patrick, right? Because Patrick was pretty active.
He's a genius.
I was going to say, but he was also active politically, right? Doesn't matter whether you're wearing the blue or the red hat. He was in the game, as they say. But I mean, it would seem to me that one of the simplest issues we could solve is the voting issue. Who voted? How do we know it was them? And how do we record and count that vote? What do you guys think of that?
I think it's genius, and I think it's necessary. Right now, we have a system that it's clear that candidates and elections they're taking candidates and they're installing them, that elections are being compromised. There's lots of questions about the machines still. There's lots of questions about the bad voter rolls. Imagine if all the voter rolls were cleaned up and put on the blockchain and, of course, integrated with people's death certificates, people's moving certificates that they've actually moved, that the post office system was unified with it. I don't know what you think, Johnny, but I think that would be a perfect solution to fix, to put the entire voting rolls and the entire voting system on the blockchain.
Yeah, again, to me, the barrier to entry would be the fragmentation in that. You have just like the titles and surrogate courts, some of this stuff goes down to the municipal level with rules, technologies, approvals, public statements, public